Introduce the next speaker to you. He's going to talk about NEOS, a content management platform. He is a very skilled developer and a technical architect. I think he could have had many well-paid jobs, but he opted to follow his passion and even to publish what he is producing as open source for other people to use it. He's a technical thought leader. He created a PHP framework called Flow, when a lot of the today quite popular PHP frameworks didn't exist, and they copied everything from him. He's also co-founder of NEOS CMS, and he's now supporting other agencies with their NEOS and Flow projects with his company Flow Native. All the way from North Germany, Robert Lemke.
Oh, that was quite flattering. Thank you. Well, we have several options here. I can give the talk in English and show you German slides. I can give it in German and show you English slides. But only, so I guess for English slides, English? Yes? French would be horrible. Okay, I know this is not quite right for Basel, but probably. Okay, Dominik already introduced me. So, yeah, my father always reminds me of, so how do you actually earn money with that, whatever you are doing? But as Dominik said, I just followed my passion and never regretted it. So what I'm actually doing with two friends and colleagues of mine is we are supporting everyone who wants to start with NEOS or is already using Flow. And actually, who's a Flow Native customer? That's, yeah, almost half of you. That's nice. Or has been at some point. So that's a lot of fun. It's actually quite intense sometimes because we offer some developer help desk where developers of web agencies and organizations can ask questions about Flow and NEOS, and we support them there. And that can be sometimes quite difficult, like, you know, in half an hour we need to launch our website and we have this huge problem and so on. But it's so nice for us to see what everyone is doing with NEOS and to know what the community is doing. So, and I usually don't talk that much about our company, but one thing I really want to tell you is that because I've been working on that for the last 2.5 years, is a new thing called Flow Native Beach, which is a cloud hosting platform for NEOS and a project platform, which we are about to launch. So we are currently in the beta phase, and yeah, that basically allows you to just put your Git repository URL into Beach, then wait a little, and then your NEOS website will come up. And it's much more than that, of course. It's scalable, it can auto-scale, it can support your web agency workflow and so on. And I just want to mention that because we are currently looking for people using NEOS who would like to give us feedback and give it a try and try it with their own projects. So, and it's really actually quite fresh now. We're going to start with that, or we started with that this week, accepting beta users for that. So if you're interested or want to have a quick demo, then just approach me at some point. And I'm really excited about it, as you can tell. So, who is using NEOS already? Because I know some of you do. Okay. This talk here is about what is NEOS about, and of course, I mean, those of you who are using it already, for them it might be old news, but maybe you also discover something new. So what I want to do is give you a quick overview of what NEOS is useful for, what the concepts are. So it's kind of the basic talk of today. And then later on, we'll have some more specific things. If you have any questions, then of course just ask them right away. We can do that with a small group, very interactive if you like. Okay, so what's so unique about NEOS when you see it the first time, when you sell it to your customer, or actually you don't sell it, right? But so what is the thing people notice first? That is probably the type of editing. You know, we allow you to just click anywhere on your website and then modify the content there. So the entry barrier for editing content in NEOS is very, very low. Most people will actually start using NEOS without any training. So they will be able to do basic editing of the website or other content just by logging into the tool and using it. And you might see a lot of features here and there, but still the feedback I get very often is when people log into NEOS and see the user interface, they say like, yeah, that's nice, but doesn't seem to have many features because there are not many buttons, right? And there's a reason for that. We try to actually really think about what do we have to put into the user interface. We want to make it very easy for everyone to use NEOS. So we will argue a lot about new core features before we actually introduce them. We will not just put all ideas on a pile and then just create some open source project out of it. So, and because that is so important for us, we also discuss the how we do things a lot. That has a high value in our NEOS community, so we'll discuss new development techniques and design techniques, user experience design and all that. So just keep that in mind. If you think like there are lots of buttons missing, that is because it was so hard to distill it into these few buttons. And as I said, we have quite high acceptance across the users using NEOS, and very often when there's a decision to be made for a new content management system to be introduced, the editors will actually be one of the most demanding people, like, yeah, we really want NEOS because we've seen how easy it is, and they will convince the technical staff or actually, yeah, some people to actually go for NEOS. So, I mean, inline editing is great, and that is quite easy. You can, of course, also work with all kinds of different kinds of content in NEOS, not just text. You can write text, of course, but you can also upload images and create your very own content type. There's some built-in media management in NEOS, which allows you to resize and manipulate images a bit, and also tag these and find them in different collections. So all that is quite simple and intuitive to use. But good morning. NEOS is not just for websites where you edit what you see. Like there's a lot of discussion about this approach to have what you see is what you get, because that's basically what we have there. It's a what you see is what you get editor. But of course that is not true. I mean, because what you write there is not what someone gets in the end, because there are so many different variations of someone can read your content. So luckily, when mobile phones came out, we were forced to think about different representations for our content. That was really the first time where we really thought like, okay, the approach we have currently, that doesn't work anymore, we need some mobile version. But because it had so many restrictions and you were using it differently. But of course mobile is not the only channel. And I mean, yeah, the Internet of Things is there. I just get a notification that we have a new support ticket on my watch, not on my fridge. I don't have such a fridge yet. But that means, I mean, the whole Internet of Things market is so gigantic. They estimate about 33 billion devices just in the next year. And how will you display your content there, or on a watch, for example? Does the content fit on your smartwatch? So, and what does a content management system have to do in order to enable editors to create content for all these different kinds of devices? So the first thing is that the system should actually think about content as content and not data. That might sound very trivial, but I think most of the older content management systems think about content as data. So the developers approached it like data. They put text into columns in a database and they create queries and things like that. What we try to do with NEOS is that we think in the content domain and think about content types and so on. And also the way we store content is much different than a traditional database would do. So we have a content repository which is tailored to store unstructured or structured data. We can have tree structures or unstructured content and find content there again. So that's a very important point about NEOS, that you're dealing with content, not with data. And of course, that also means that we experiment with features which help editors to deal with content. Dominik, for example, created a little experiment with IBM Watson, which analyzes your content and is checking the tone of the content. You know, it's a nice thing to try out. So it will tell you the amount of disgust in your text here, or how confident the author was while writing it, and so on. And we can do that by integrating with other services, machine learning services, and not just because it's fun to do. I mean, I guess Dominik did it because it was fun to do.
Nice number.
But honestly, I mean, we think about how can we improve the workflows for editors and for people dealing with content. So what else do you have to do in order to cater for all these devices? I think Dominik will also talk about that later on a bit more. But one important thing is that if you want to have content which adapts to the target device or target channel, you need to have structured content. So I wrote here adaptive content, and that is basically like you would say responsive design. So it doesn't mean the content gets smaller, scaled down, but it adapts to the device or to the channel. That means you will have to have different kinds of headlines: a short headline, a medium headline, a long headline. And depending on the channel, you can program NEOS to deliver that kind of headline. But that also requires quite a different workflow for editors, because they need to get used to write 3 headlines, for example. And it also means something very different for our developers, because they need to understand the content domain and, for example, not create a Twitter headline and a Facebook headline, but a short headline and a medium and a long headline, because they don't know which other channels will pop up at some point, right? So it's actually quite a lot of fun to do that, because we have this concept of content types, or technically called node types. Node types are that define the structure of your content, and we don't have hard-coded content types in NEOS, so you can change any kind of content type NEOS offers, and that is possible just with configuration, so you don't actually have to program something in PHP in order to introduce a new press release content type, for example. You basically do that by configuration, and then of course you need to take care about some templates to offer the design as well. And then we have a concept called content dimensions. So when we started thinking about languages and needed to implement support for languages in NEOS, we took quite a round trip and thought about, so what's so special about languages? Can't we implement something more general? So what's the actual concept behind languages for websites, for example? And the solution we came up with is called content dimensions, because we thought like, okay, a language is just one other dimension of your content. So you could have a language dimension and also a country dimension. And country and language are different things, as you know here. So that means you could have German content for Switzerland or German content for Germany, and that they might differ. So now you have two dimensions, country and language. And then when you want to personalize your content, like for mountaineers from Germany speaking a bit of French, then you have three dimensions, because you have the interest as another dimension. So that is the general concept in NEOS, which we call content dimensions. And well, the implementation is rather basic, but still intuitive, I'd say. So you can choose from your dimension language, choose a different language, and then decide to copy everything you have in your original. And now it's copied all the content, and you can start overwriting the content by the German content in this case. That is a very simple workflow, of course, and there are, of course, projects which demand for more complex workflows, but yeah, but this workflow is very powerful. So here's a selector for. Oh, actually, I can use that. Yeah, right. So here's a selector up there with three different dimensions: the target audience, country, and the language. And as a developer, you can define which dimension values can be combined with which other dimension values. And you can define fallback rules. So if there is no content for the Spanish-speaking Swiss guy who likes to ride bikes, then just show some other content. Then another thing, of course, which happens when you are working on websites or some other content, is that you are going to work in a team. And before we introduced features in that area, we watched a couple of teams to how they work with NEOS. And one of our customers, for example, is planning a lot of campaigns in parallel, and they will launch at certain times. So imagine you would prepare different campaigns which modify parts of your website, and different teams are working on that. But at the same time, of course, your live website evolves, and it might be that you have almost finished preparing a campaign, but before you publish that, you still need to fix that typo on the website, or need to bypass the content you haven't published yet. And for that, we have the concept called workspaces. And workspaces allow you to isolate content changes into one workspace and then publish that at a given time. So here's a little demo about how that works. So this is just the live website. In order to make sure that we discover it again, I just write, this is the live website, publish that. So you see, this is now live. Now I can go to the workspaces module, and here I see my personal workspace. That is where I write all my content. Now I create a new workspace, which is called the staging workspace. Every content which is going to be published on the website should go through that staging workspace, and probably only one person can publish that workspace. Now I have another workspace called Christmas Campaign, which is based on the staging workspace. Can I stop that here? Oh, no. So we have to watch it again. Yeah, because maybe if you're not familiar with this workspaces concept, that might be a bit confusing. How does that actually work? So imagine you have the live website, and then put some semi-transparent paper on your website. And what you see is, and that paper is of course a workspace, and what you see through it is your live website. Now, when you change something in your workspace, that means that you actually write something on your piece of paper which obstructs your live website. So if you change a headline, you don't see the live headline anymore, but your own headline. And when you publish your workspace, it means that everything you have changed is going to put to the live website. Yes?
So it's like a Git branching, right?
It is very similar to Git branching. And now imagine you would have multiple branches based on each other. So you would have the live website, then your staging workspace, and on top of that you have another paper, which is your Christmas campaign. Now you write something while you chose your Christmas campaign workspace, and you can publish that to the workspace below, to the staging workspace. And eventually that staging workspace can be published to live. So basically it would be like creating a branch in Git, and then merging that into some upstream branch until it is finally merged to master something. Actually, we thought about using Git for these kinds of things some years ago, but it would be way too complicated for editors to understand what's happening. Because in Git you can have merge conflicts and all that, and how do you solve that? So like, hey editor, here's a merge conflict with your headline, character 3, what do you think? Okay, let's check again. So my personal workspace basically is only visible to me, so everything I type is ending up in the personal workspace. And this again is the staging workspace. And you see the visibility can be private or internal, which means that only I can see or publish this workspace, or the whole team can do that. So in this case, the Christmas campaign workspace is visible to the whole team. So now I go back to the content module, see my live content, and I choose a different workspace I want to work in, and that is the Christmas campaign workspace. So I write something like Merry Christmas, delete some content there, probably add some image. Bacon, I guess bacon. Chicks are just little chicks. No problem. That's for Easter. Bacon is for Christmas. Now I publish that to the Christmas campaign workspace, And when I go to the live website, it's still the live website. So when I go to the live workspace, I see the live workspace. Now I could fix a typo or something on the live website. When I go to the staging workspace, I still see the live website because the Christmas workspace hasn't been published to staging. So let's fix a typo here in staging. And now see the overview of the workspaces. So you see Christmas campaign has a couple of changes, staging has one modification, and you can review that now. So you can see, okay, I fixed the typo there in the staging workspace and published that to live later on. And in the Christmas campaign workspace, I have these changes. So what you don't see up down there is, of course, selectively publish only that change, or you can publish all changes of their workspace. Now everything is merged or published into the staging workspace, and now I can publish all that to live, and when I go to the live website I see the Christmas content live. Right, so that is quite a powerful feature used in many interesting projects, and still rather simple to use. Right, so, yes?
Does this also include some formality check workflows behind that? Is it possible or not at all?
Yeah, so workflows like please review that content before that and that. We don't have like a built-in workflow for that, so currently what people do is notify each other, or I think there's even a plugin which sends notification emails for that. The approach I'd like to take with that is rather provide a way where you can leave notes and ping people and things like that, instead of having a rigid workflow. Because I made the experience with other projects that if you set up such a rigid workflow, it will never really match the organization, and you will always have to go back to your web agency to get that adjusted, and then people will start using other people's user accounts and so on. So it's really, that's what happens, unfortunately. So so right now there's no real built-in workflow. You really have to tell your colleague, please have a look at that. But it would be rather easy, or maybe there's a plugin already for it to send notifications. Okay. When I started with creating Flow and NEOS, the world looked a bit different, of course, but what we could already see is that that the hosting evolved, and we were running our projects not just on one web server, but multiple web servers, and we had to somehow scale them. And at some point also that idea of immutable hardware or immutable servers came up. And that means you put something on a server and never change it again, and if you need to upgrade something, you just create a new server and move over to that, right? Or also if you scale a website, so traditionally maybe you would have multiple web servers, a database, and a shared file system like NFS or something like that. You always have the problem that you need that shared file system. That is also one of the biggest problems we still have today with cloud computing in general, that you always need some virtual hard drive somewhere. And fortunately, that was already known a bit when I started with that, so it went into the design of the framework from the beginning that we don't want to rely on a file system. So NEOS can run without a persistent file system. It doesn't need to store your images and all the other data on a local file system. We can just put that into cloud storage. And then it looks like this. So you still have your database cluster. you have lots of web servers, and you have cloud storage. But the advantage is that you can just delete or spin up new web servers at any time. You don't have to save any data which is on that machine. That means you can have auto-scaling for your website or for your application, because you can within seconds spin up new web servers or delete web servers, and they don't need any data or shared file system. You can imagine how the idea came up to provide a cloud platform for NEOS. Because I was working a lot with Docker, and Docker is nice or not, who knows, but it's basically all we have for containers at the moment. I guess that will change at some point. Still, it allows us to transport applications in a cluster, and what's the big deal for me currently is Kubernetes. Don't get me started talking about that. That can consume days. That is basically a system which can manage where to put containers in your whole cluster. That is basically what Google does with everything they run, like Google Search, Google Mail. Everything is run on containers, and there's some intelligent software which decides where to put these containers. So you don't have to care about that, but the good news is NEOS can do all that. NEOS is perfectly tailored for these kinds of hosting applications. And the reason is that we have that PHP application framework as a foundation. As Dominik said, when I started creating Flow, that was the time where Symfony 1 was out, and Zen Framework 1, and so on. So the whole PHP framework scene looked a bit different than today. And the concepts I needed, like dependency injection and some kind of object management, or also these cloud capabilities, just didn't exist back then. So that is why we have started our own PHP framework. Now, the cool thing about that is it is a framework which is really fun to work with, and NEOS is built on that framework. That means you can create standalone applications with Flow without any CMS functionality, and decide to later on combine it with content management. And your application will just work as a plugin for NEOS. Or you do it the other way around. You start with a NEOS website, and later on decide that you need to have some custom functionality, some plugins, or some integration with other services, and that will just fit nicely together because it's the same framework using NEOS. So I have some examples for that here. That is a bit an older demo. We tried for one day. We just tried to integrate an existing shop with a new NEOS website, and just met for a day to see what's possible. So what I do here is I create a new content element here of type product teaser, and up here I just enter some article number for the shop, and then some code will fetch the content from the shop and include it here in the teaser. And now the nice thing is that you're able to integrate content from the shop, from NEOS, and some other parts of NEOS. So in this case you have a product, you have an employee, which is a content type somewhere else in this website, and now you enrich it with some quote here for this specific teaser. So that's really one of the things I love about NEOS is these ways of integration. We make it easy for an editor to create such a landing page. Just remember, I mean, this would be just an editor without any programming skills, of course, and the task would be create a new landing page for these kinds of products. They would just look up the products in the shop and would be able to create these new teasers and a whole new landing page within minutes. And there are, of course, in the meantime, there are websites doing that. For example, markenboden.de is a combination of Neos and Magento, which is really deeply integrated. And there are some really crazy integrations with third-party systems, SAP integrations, and so on. So, for example, this here is a vendor of specialized papers. They have thousands of different papers in different variations, and each of them has photos attached and so on, and that is all handled with Neos and being searchable and configurable and all that. Römerturm is the name of that company. So there are all kinds of crazy things, and one important bit for people to know is, especially when Neos was quite new, was like, how is the future of Neos in terms of how reliable will be new releases and so on. I can tell you that until 2022 you can use Neos 4.3 LTS. Sounds like a long time ahead, but still it's not so many years. But we have a release roadmap where you can actually see that, okay, these will be the new major versions, and then we have a long-term support version. You can find all that on neos.io, where you always see when it will be, when which release will be released. Okay, so about the Neos ecosystem, just to see for whom Neos would be suitable. So Neos is not a superconducting particle accelerator like we have here in Switzerland. It's more a tool, right? So, but probably not this one. So if you need a smoothing plane to work with wood, you might go to the next store and buy this one, but we more think about it like a specialized professional tool, a good tool. It doesn't have to be fancy, but it has to be well thought out and good for your purpose. So what I think Neos of is as a tool for professional web developers. That means, it doesn't mean that it's complicated. It just means that this is the right tool for professional web developers, and they will make the most out of it. It might be suited for other people as well, but they might not take full advantage of it, right? And you often hear, unfortunately, like, or you heard last year in the beginning, Neos is rather for smaller projects because it's quite new and so on. Look there, which projects exist and so on. So I'd rather say, from the concepts of Neos and from our experience, Neos is made for medium and large projects. So if you never used Neos and your first project is a website where you have a budget of 3 days for development, including markup maybe, then Neos is not for you, because then just spin up some WordPress, buy a Bootstrap theme, and that's probably rather what you should do. But when you have Neos already, then you will use it for all kinds of projects, also for small websites, just a one page and so on. You will just spin it up and feel convenient with it. Yeah, so who's using Neos already? Lots of people, of course. What I'm actually a bit proud of is that 1&1 is using that for their own website. So, I mean, it's the second largest hosting company in the world, and they use it for their own website. And not only that, they also started using Flow and Neos for many other parts. They are at NEOS conference in Hamburg this year, there was that nice announcement that that strategically 1&1 decided to go for NEOS everywhere they need content management. That is quite cool. Well, there are big hotel chains where NEOS plays a critical part because they generate millions of euros through that website, where NEOS is really mission critical. Also, Flow is used, for example, DKIX, the German internet hub, is using Flow for configuring the routing of the network traffic for the peers, you know. And they also run their own website with NEOS. But of course, there are lots of different brand websites and marketing websites. Actually, also media websites. T3N magazine, one of the biggest magazines in Germany about IT, digital lifestyle, and so on, is using NEOS now. And also for all their CRM and ERP system is based on Flow. Yeah, that's of that. Anyway, but why doesn't everybody use NEOS? I don't know. One of the reasons is, of course, that it's quite difficult to get into a market so late, right? If there's a CMS market with Drupal and all these big systems, it's quite difficult. And we are still a rather small team, like, I don't know the current number, like 20, 25 people or so, plus all the contributors, of course, but we don't have many marketing specialists or full-time evangelists who travel from conference to conference. So I think that's one of the points. And that brings me to what Dominik said in the beginning, because NEOS is not just about the software, but very much about the community. And that's actually what also keeps me in the project for so long, because I'm doing that since 2003 now. Well, and that is also where all the features come from, because if you don't pay for the software, someone needs to create all these features, right? And that happens a lot in spare time during sprints we do on houseboats or in castles, as you've seen earlier. But also we try to convince our customers that let's invest some extra day or some extra hours to make that feature you want in your project, to make it a bit more useful and more generic, and then share it with the community. And that is how new features get to living. For example, the workspaces, stackable workspaces feature, that has been basically sponsored by 1&1, but they just needed it and they are happy to share it, and this is now how everybody can use it. Okay, now you say, deal, I'll buy that, but as I said, it's not like buying a software or deciding, let's introduce it. Ideally, you'll start becoming part of the community. That's how you gain most of it, because there are many skilled people and very friendly people, and you can learn a lot, not only about NEOS and development, but also about life and children education and sports and whatnot. So, right, so that was basically my introduction to NEOS. If you have any thoughts about it or questions now or later, just approach me. I have no idea what the time is or who's next or whatever, but we'll find that, okay? So, yeah, thanks so far. Any questions right now? No. Who is Dominik? Yeah.
Who's next? One question. You were talking about coming back to the workspaces. You said you didn't want to have merge conflicts, but I'm thinking about What if, let's say, you're working in your workspace and I'm working in mine, and let's say we have this title, share your thoughts. So I'm thinking, oh, this should be uppercase, so I change it. And then you see, oh, there's a typo, the H is missing. What happens then?
Yeah.
Because that would be a potential merge.
Right. So technically what's happening is though that person who publishes last wins. And so how dangerous is that? It depends on how long you keep content in your own workspace. As long as you have quick publish flows, then usually nothing bad happens. Also because most teams are organized in a way that they say, I work on that part now, and they need to communicate with each other. So we don't have any restriction there yet. What we want to have, though, is some kind of warnings. That you say, someone started working on that, which you also modify, so get in touch with that guy. So we really thought about, can we resolve that in some way, but it's too difficult, too complex for the editor to understand. The good thing is that we have these conflicts only per content element. So if it doesn't, it's not a problem if someone edits on the same page, as long as if it's in a different content element. Okay. Actually, really good in time. So we have a case study now from Stefan.
Yep.
That's what you wanted to say.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, we're now going to have going to see a case study, and in this case study we will just see how NEOS has been used, and we'll see kind of what was the problem and what was the solution. And often we only see the solution, but we don't see the problem. You know, and so the interesting thing for me about the case studies is to see, okay, what was actually before it was this great looking website or this application or something like that. So what was the thought process in it? And that's why we have built case studies into the day. Yeah, the next speaker is the organizer of the first MEET NEOS in Switzerland in 2015 in Zurich. And he is a doer. So when I said I'm thinking of organizing a MEET NEOS in Basel, he said, "Do you need any help?" Only doers do that. And then he said, "Well, do you want to record the talks and have a live stream?" I first said no, because I felt like, okay, I don't know how many people come. How about when it is empty, and so on, and yeah. But then we got some people who asked, yeah, would there be a live stream or not? And I started to like the idea. And now we have one, so we are actually streaming on Facebook, on the MEET NEOS channel, the talks. And yeah, we have Stefan here as the Web Access founder. And also one thing that I liked about Web Access, it says sustainability first, not the throwaway culture. So I'm quite interested how this reflects in your case study.
Thank you. I will do the talk in German, I think. I'm sorry for all the English-speaking people. How many only speak English? Or don't speak German? Not so much, okay. You can ask me later. Ich darf heute einen Showcase zeigen. Das ist ein aktuelles Projekt von Anfang Jahr, Eldora Gastronomie. Dieses Projekt starteten wir noch bei .pals. Wir Web Access Entwickler sind aus der Webagentur .pals heraus entstanden. Und das Projekt ging dann laufend über. Während der Projektphase haben wir unsere Firma Web Access gegründet, sind komplett eigenständig und im Gegensatz zu der Webagentur vorher konzentrieren wir uns nur noch auf NEOS-Projekte. Wir machen keine anderen Projekte mehr. Nun, Eldora. Eldora ist eine Gemeinschaftsgastronomie. Was heißt das? Eldora betreibt Restaurantbetriebe für größere Unternehmen an unterschiedlichen Standorten. Also sie betreiben eine Mensa. Aber das auf sehr hohem Niveau mit unterschiedlichen Restaurants, unterschiedlichen Positionierungen. Was war das Ziel? Das Ziel war, eine Plattform zu erstellen, die für die unterschiedlichen Kunden, also Mandanten, die Standorte abbildete, die Restaurants an den verschiedenen Standorten und die Haupt-Admin-Oberfläche für die Köche, also die Betriebsleiter und die Köche ist, um die Menüs zu planen. In der Vergangenheit war das so, dass die Köche hatten ein Excel-Template, hatten viele Arbeitsblätter, die sie in bestimmter Reihenfolge und in bestimmten Feldern genau abzufüllen hatten. Und die Zentrale importierte das dann jeweils Ende Woche auf ihre Website, was dann regelmäßig zu kleineren oder größeren Schweißausbrüchen führte, weil der Import und die Excel-Templates nie wirklich sauber funktioniert haben anscheinend. Also war das Ziel auch, die Köche in das NEOS reinzubekommen, Excel rauszubekommen und auch komplette Kalkulationen und die Ausdrucke alles direkt über eine Oberfläche zu lösen. Zusätzlich ein Catering-Shop-System, sich einfach meine kleinen Menüs oder was auch immer ich gerade brauche für ein Meeting in meinen Meetingraum stellen kann. Klingt einfach, war es natürlich nicht ganz so. Wir haben uns ganz klar für NEOS entschieden, schon letztes Jahr. Sind wir super happy und ich würde sagen, schauen wir mal auf die Website. Wir haben eine einfache, schlichte Startseite. Wir können die Standorte wählen. Das ist in diesem Beispiel Suva, das kennen wir in der Schweiz gut. Auf der Restaurantseite haben wir das Wochenmenü, können die Tage durchschauen, können entsprechend filtern und so kann ich mich entscheiden, in welches Restaurant gehe ich heute. Bei einigen Kunden gibt es natürlich auch mehrere Restaurants an einem Standort, da ist es dann relevant für die Mitarbeiter. Das Catering selbst ist je nach Standort unterschiedlich, da haben wir unterschiedliche Angebote, ist schlussendlich aufgebaut wie ein Job. Ich kann sehr genau filtern, was ich jetzt genau brauche für Business Lunch oder was auch immer und kann das wie gewohnt shoppen. Ich kann das auch verknüpfen mit meinem Konto und gerade wenn ich wiederkehrende Events habe, kann ich das einfach reordern immer wieder, ohne dass ich alles neu raussuchen muss. Wenn wir nun ins Backend wechseln, haben wir eine klassische NEOS-Website. Genauso einfach bedienbar ist, wie sie auch bedienbar sein soll, wie wir das von NEOS kennen. Ich klicke in den Content rein, auch Slider, alles kein Problem. Es sieht so aus wie im Frontend. Es ist aber nur das halbe Spiel, oder nicht mal, denn die Menüverwaltung ist dann eigentlich ziemlich viel komplexer. Es ist aufgeteilt pro Standort, pro Restaurant. Sie können komplette Wochen erstellen, also Sie erstellen immer eine Menüwoche im Ganzen und bekommen dann nach Ihren Voreinstellungen bereits die Notes erstellt. Also Sie müssen nicht alles einzeln erstellen, sondern Sie müssen nur noch die Menüs ausfüllen. Das natürlich abhängig vom Restaurant. Jedes Restaurant hat unterschiedliche Themen, unterschiedliche Menülinien und teilweise auch unterschiedliche Preisvorlagen etc. Das ist alles automatisch vorgegeben. Jetzt haben wir eigentlich alle Informationen, um die Website abbilden zu können. Der Prozess von den Köchen geht dann noch weiter. Sie haben Preisvorgaben Preise, die Sie einhalten müssen pro Menü. Und das hatten wir abzubilden. Dafür haben wir pro Tag einzelne Ansichten generiert. Auf Basis der erfassten Menüs können Sie zusätzlich Bestandteile der einzelnen Menüs ergänzen, könnten es auch als Einkaufsliste direkt verwenden, geben die benötigte Menge ein, die Preise etc. und sehen dann relativ einfach auf einen Blick, sind sie Budget oder nicht, und können anschließend gleich auch noch alle benötigten Budgetsteller in unterschiedlichen Formaten ausdrucken, direkt aus dem System, um im Restaurant vor dem Restaurant zu verteilen. Grundsätzlich ist das auch schon ready, um direkt digitale Screens anzuspielen. Nun die Zahlen. Diese Plattform ist aktuell für 2 Großkunden bereits aufgeschaltet, den zweiten dürfen wir nicht nennen. 6 folgen noch in diesem Jahr, 2 sind aktuell auf der Startrampe, also das geht gleich weiter. Bis jetzt bilden wir 10 unterschiedliche Standorte in diesem System ab. 15 Küchenchefs und Editoren arbeiten mit diesem System, mit flexiblen Freigabeprozessen, also nicht jeder kann alles direkt auf Live publizieren, was durchaus Sinn macht. Total sind es aktuell 25 Restaurants. Und im Catering-Shop, der dann etwas gewachsen ist, haben wir inzwischen über 1200 Artikel, die natürlich je nach Standort etwas variieren können. In der Statistik sehen wir 3.500 tägliche Besucher, die meisten kurz vor Mittag. Das System soll es auch entsprechend mal etwas aushalten können, gerade wenn Events im Jahr stehen. Und auch noch spannend, wir haben Notes gehört, alles ist ein Node, auch Menüs sind Nodes, Seiten sind Nodes, und inzwischen haben wir etwas mehr als 50.000 Nodes in diesem System und sind bei 2 aktiven Plattformen von 8. Kommt also noch was auf uns zu. Ich bin von WebAccess, schaut mal auf die Website, es würde uns freuen, wenn wir irgendein Feedback bekommen oder wenn ihr Fragen habt, auch später, hier findet ihr immer irgendeinen Kontakt. Ich bin Stefan. Fragt mich anschließend, wenn ihr irgendwelche Detailfragen wissen möchtet. Samuel als Lead Developer auf diesem Projekt ist auch hier, reiche ich dann gern weiter. Schreibt eine Mail, schreibt auf Twitter. Dankeschön.
Wir haben noch etwas Zeit. Habt ihr vielleicht noch eine Frage? Oder? Jemand noch eine Frage?
Oder Hunger?
Okay.
Kannst du sagen, was anderes Kabel kommt? Also vorher hat es noch eins gehabt mit so einem und der VGA-Kabel. Ist das irgendwo?
Okay, there was a cable here because I tested it, but the cable has disappeared. So. Wie bitte?
Mini hat
Ja. Aber es hat eben kein VGA-Kabel da. VGA wird auch kommen. Ich muss das schnell finden.
Ja, Mini-Display auf der VDMI.
Okay, dankeschön. Oh. Okay, good. So I'm going to make a use case. I'm going to show you a use case on Antikenmuseumbasel Basel. I will do it together with a very skilled front-end developer. I must say I probably have never seen a front-end developer who is so quick and has so many tricks in his trick box to make things just work. He also is telling me that he doesn't need any front-end frameworks. He can just do it all native because it's so much simpler to do. So yeah, Danilo, just join me, please. Yeah, I want to show you the parties involved. So we have Antikenmuseumbasel, who is the customer, then Hoffmann Lausch, who is the sponsor of the project, and then YAI. Danilo belongs to YAI. They do design, content strategy, and the front end here. And then Web Essentials, we introduced them to NEOS, and then we helped with the integration, and we were a subcontractor of YAI. Well, it's a museum website.
So this is what the old website looked like. And so in the beginning we thought about, well, what does a modern website need? As he was telling, Dominik was telling, Roche was sponsoring the whole project, and they also did a redesign of the whole look of the museum. And so our task was to figure out what would a modern new look for the website of the Antikenmuseum be, and we also looked at various websites of other big museums. And what we found is actually museum websites, they look a bit outdated, which is interesting because you think culture and they think about aesthetics and want to be up to date, but I think most of these websites were made maybe 5 to 10 years ago and are actually due for a refresh, like this one was. So the first thing we noticed from a design and content perspective is that it was very convoluted, the navigation, and everything was a bit small, and there were way too many menu points. They also had a number of microsites for each of the exhibitions they did, so a lot of legacy stuff. So what we did is just clear out the structure, figure out what's important to the users, and in the end we came up with the following result. Voila. So we thought about which navigation points are most important, what information needs to be visible up front. That's why we have, for instance, this feature that you always see the opening times of the museum on each page in the top right corner. And I think, yeah, some things I can also show in the live website. The landing page is quite important for us. For instance, if you scroll down, you see this dashboard idea that we introduced, so that the main information blocks are available in this dashboard. And Dominik can maybe tell more about how NEOS was helping us achieve this, also so that content editors can work with this and keep it up to date. Yeah, we can have a look at one sub-page. The museum one is a nice one. Maybe go to museum. Oh, the internet.
Museum.
So yeah, we shortened text, so they also did a lot of work on the content together with the client, and came up with these foldouts where you can hide some content to make it all a bit more appealing and appear more compact. If you go to the next slide, I think I added an image of the process. So yeah, this is one of the meetings we had with some people from Roche and some people from the museum, just thinking about how to restructure and what to do with the website. And we were working quite closely with the clients because they are the experts on the content. we provide the design, and then they were the experts on the IT and NEOS side.
Yeah, just some highlights. I mean, it's not a very big website like the one that Stefan presented, but I think it's a different domain, and it was also about making museum websites more attractive. So we had a multilingual setup, very special for Switzerland. It was not German and French, it was German and English. And I think what comes really handy here is just the inline editing. I can also show you on the next slide. Here you can see a back-end view, and we can just see that when we work on these tiles, it's really useful to see kind of how much space a tile uses. And also we did it that way that you can have an unlimited amount of tiles, so it's not like a grid of like 3 tiles per page, or actually basically just the width of the page adjusts and defines how many tiles are visible. And in NEOS you can just add more tiles, and it's not like a static grid element that we have used here. I think that's quite nice, because then also for this you really need this, what you see is what you get, and that you can also change the screen size and see how it looks in different screens. Yeah, also for these foldouts, it's really cool to just have a view where you can see how much space does it use, and how will it look like on the page. Yeah, also we have a management of the opening hours. One thing that we forgot, we thought like, oh okay, good, it's just 7 days, so that's easy, you know. And then we figured out that there are exceptions, and museum night and other opening hour exceptions, and that we also need to take care of, and with which we can override the usual opening hours. And then we have a calendar automation. Yeah. What I think is also very important to know is NEOS makes it really easy for teams to collaborate, because we have the separation of concerns, we have the front end, have the integration, so it's all nicely separated, and also different teams can work on it. Yeah. And you can meet us at the NEOS desk for further info if you're interested in the project.
Thank you.